He traded his entire destiny for a single meal of bread and lentil stew. But what was really in the blessing that Jacob stole from his brother Esau? What made those spoken words so irreversible and so powerful that they would go on to shape the course of history for thousands of years? This is one of the Bible's most dramatic and perplexing family sagas. On the surface, it's a story of deception, betrayal, and sibling rivalry. But beneath the surface lies a profound mystery about the tangible power of a spoken patriarchal blessing. The stakes were nothing less than the covenant promise God had made to Abraham. The blessing Isaac was to bestow was not just a father's well-wishes. It was the legal and spiritual transfer of the Abrahamic covenant. It would determine who would become the father of the chosen nation, the ancestor of the future Messiah, and the possessor of the promised land. This was a one-time, non-revocable inheritance. What exactly did Isaac say to Jacob that was so potent it could never be taken back? We are about to unlock the ancient secrets of patriarchal blessings, exploring the theological and cultural context to reveal the divine power contained in those words. You will discover that a blessing in the ancient world was seen as a dynamic and creative force, an event that shaped reality itself. Imagine the tension in that dimly lit tent, the smell of savory food, the feel of the goatskins on Jacob's arms as he trembled before his blind father. The very fate of the world hung in the balance of this deception. If you're ready to understand the true weight of God's promises and the power of the spoken word, listen closely. The story is far deeper than you imagine. To understand the power of Isaac's blessing, we must first step into the worldview of the ancient Near East. In their culture, the spoken word, especially the word of a patriarch on his deathbed, was not merely descriptive. It was creative. It was believed to have an inherent power to bring about what it described. Once spoken, a blessing or a curse was like an arrow shot from a bow. It could not be recalled. It was a legal, binding, and spiritual transaction that altered the future. This is why Isaac, upon discovering the deception, was filled with a great and exceedingly bitter cry. He couldn't just say, "Oops, I take it back." The words had been released into the spiritual atmosphere, and they were already at work, shaping Jacob's destiny. The blessing was seen as a transfer of the father's very soul and essence to his chosen heir. It was the endowment of success, authority, and divine favor. So, when Isaac thought he was blessing Esau, he wasn't just wishing him well. He was conferring upon him the spiritual authority and power that had been passed down from Abraham. The atmosphere in that tent was not just familial, it was legal and cosmic. A transaction of eternal significance was taking place. What were the specific contents of this powerful blessing? Isaac, smelling the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed, declared, "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." Let's break this down. This was a multifaceted endowment of power. First, it was a blessing of prosperity and sustenance. Heaven's dew and earth's richness. In an agrarian society, this was the promise of life itself. Second, it was a blessing of political power and dominion. May nations serve you. This promised influence and authority on a global scale. Third, and most controversially, it was a blessing of familial authority. Be Lord over your brothers. This legally established Jacob's supremacy within the family, a direct reversal of the natural birth order. Finally, it ended by echoing the very covenant God made with Abraham. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. This last part is the most crucial. It was the official transfer of the Abrahamic covenant. Isaac, acting as God's representative, formally passed the mantle of the covenant promise to Jacob. The words he spoke were not his own. They were a channel for divine will. Imagine the weight of those words hanging in the air, the spiritual power being transferred from father to son, a tangible exchange of destiny. This is why, even after the deception was revealed, Isaac could not reverse it. He had acted as a conduit for a divine decree. But this raises a troubling question. How could a blessing obtained through deception and lies be considered valid by God? This is the heart of the mystery. The story does not condone Jacob's actions. In fact, his life after this event was marked by struggle and exile. He was deceived by his own uncle Laban and lived in fear of his brother's vengeance for decades. He reaped what he sowed. However, sin in his sovereignty used Jacob's flawed actions to accomplish his own unchangeable purposes. The Bible is unflinchingly honest about the flaws of its heroes. Jacob, whose name means supplanter or deceiver, was certainly not chosen because of his moral perfection. He was chosen by grace. God had already declared before the twins were even born that the older will serve the younger. God's plan was going to be accomplished, but he allowed it to unfold through the messy, complicated, and often sinful choices of human beings. Feel the profound paradox here. Human deception operating alongside divine sovereignty. God did not approve of the sin, but he overruled it for his ultimate purpose. The blessing stuck not because Jacob deserved it, but because it aligned with God's predetermined will. This teaches us a powerful lesson about God's grace. It is not based on our merit, but on his sovereign choice and purpose. The blessing contained not just a future of prosperity, but a future of struggle that would lead to transformation. Jacob's life became a testament to this. The pinnacle of his story is not the reception of the blessing, but his wrestling match with God at the river Jabbok. After a night of struggle, God changes his name from Jacob, the deceiver, to Israel, which means he who struggles with God. His hip is wounded in the process, and he walks with a limp for the rest of his life. This is profoundly symbolic. The man who deceptively grabbed the blessing now clings to God in desperation. The limp is a permanent reminder that his strength comes not from his own cunning, but from his dependence on God. The stolen blessing ultimately led him to a place of brokenness and genuine faith. The power within the blessing was not just an external gift of prosperity and dominion. It was an internal catalyst for a life-altering encounter with God himself. It was a seed that, watered by years of hardship, would eventually break Jacob's self-reliance and lead him into a true covenant relationship. The ultimate power in the blessing was the relational presence of God. When Isaac transferred the Abrahamic covenant, he was transferring a relationship. The promise was always more than just material gain. It was about walking with God, being his people, and becoming a conduit for his blessing to the entire world. Jacob's deception was the crooked path he took to get to a straight-line promise. The blessing was irreversible because it was not ultimately Isaac's to give, but God's. Isaac was merely the steward. The power was in the promise of God that stood behind the words. This ancient story reveals a timeless truth. God's purposes cannot be thwarted by human failure. The blessing Jacob stole was a tangible, reality-shaping force that set in motion a chain of events leading to the formation of the 12 tribes of Israel and, ultimately, to the birth of the Messiah. It was a promise of prosperity, power, and most importantly, the transformative presence of God. It shows that God often works through the most unlikely and flawed individuals to achieve his grand and glorious purposes. If you find these deep dives into Scripture compelling, consider following for more content that uncovers the hidden mysteries of the Bible.